Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's Analyzing Finance with Nick live stream. Uh, it's been kind of a big summer for the channel. We did the Old Money Vacation Guide video series, and the tour has been kept going, and we have a really interesting pipeline of upcoming videos that we're going to see over the next few days or so and months. And while we wait for people to submit their questions, I was just going to say a little few introductory things. First, if you like, I can't get to usually all your questions. So if you want your questions to go first, either be one of the first people to ask them or submit a super chat. Second, I have some new announcements for the Analyzing Finance with Nick tour. We've added 2 new stops on the tour. We're going to Boston, which I know has been long requested, on Saturday, September 20th. And we finally have set a confirmed date for Washington, D.C. I will be in the District of Columbia for a meetup on Thursday, September 18th. So I told you, the DC people, I'd eventually get something solidified, and now we have it. And we're probably going to have, by popular demand, a second meetup later this year in New York City, as well as a second Canadian meetup in Toronto. So that is kind of what is going on when it comes to the Northeastern meetups. But we still have 2 in Northern California, 1 in Fresno and the 19th of August, and 1 in Santa Cruz on the 23rd. And we have 3 stops in Europe, Amsterdam on the 30th. I canceled Geneva just because I've realized I get kind of social hangovers if I have too many of these close together. But we still are going to have a Swiss one in Zurich. And then last but not least, we have Rome for Jubilee on September 5th. I look forward to seeing the Italians and those traveling to Italy towards the end of the summer. But now and if you want to vote on where we're going to go next, feel free to put your vote in the forms here. But now let's answer some questions. First question: legal and illegal immigrants send billions of dollars to foreign countries outside the U.S. where the value compounds by 6 times. Does this contribute to inflation in Western countries? So you're saying remittances? Are you asking if remittances cause inflation? I would say it'd be the reverse. I think remittances are a way that the U.S. exports inflation, because if instead of that money being spent in the United States domestically on goods and services, or being invested in U.S. property or financial markets, or instead it's going towards local markets in other countries. And what it effectively does is that it sends inflation to those places, because you now have more money supply in emerging market countries than you would otherwise. Like, example would be like the Philippines. Like, I know, like, about 10 years ago, I'm not sure if the number is still current, remittances from overseas were anywhere from 9 to 10% of GDP of the Philippines, which means that, like, you have 10% more goods and services, money spent on goods and services, than you would if you just had to rely on the production of your own economy. And so as a result of that, you probably have a higher price level than you would otherwise. I know the Philippines is a cheap country already, but that inflow of additional money doesn't make matters easier for that. It probably is inflationary pressure. And it's similar in Latin American countries and other places where you have a lot more money coming in through remittances than money going out, in terms of wealthy people in those countries investing in the United States. So I think it's the actual exact reverse. Next question. In your opinion, on the policy of tariffs from the Trump government are working in economic terms? It depends what you mean by working. Like, it's too early to say if people have changing their consumption patterns based on tariff. In terms of the policy goals on making the U.S. look like it has a fair deal, it seems to be working. It seems like a lot of these countries are removing their barriers and accepting at least a 10% tariff on the U.S. So it's sometimes more. It might result in just more tense geopolitical relations and not having as good relationships with other countries. And it could result in inflation, but we haven't seen it yet. And I don't think it's going to be as inflationary as feared for the reasons I talked about in the tariff live streams. Mainly the fact that a lot of the things that are causing inflation in America, healthcare, housing, education, and government, are domestically produced. And so that's the bulk of CPI. Energy too. If you add that, that's way over 50% of CPI. So, and a lot of the stuff that we do import is more discretionary goods and services. And so if those get too expensive, people just won't buy them, or they will buy some substitute, whether it's a direct substitute manufactured in the US or an indirect substitute that is just cheaper on an absolute basis. So I think that the exporters will have to inherently eat some of it. And it is a tax. I mean, the question really is it more efficient tax than income tax or property tax or any other form of taxation? So yeah, tariffs. So like, yeah, it's, and then probably need to have some sort of fiscal austerity. And maybe this tariff thing is basically just a way to sneak in a VAT in a way that plays on nationalist and populist heartstrings. That's another theory on this, and that's based on what the revenue numbers are so far. For the first 2 or 3 years, manufacturers are going to have a tough time adjusting to this, so they're likely to eat the tariff. But over time, I think it will become less and less effective. But it still might be more effective than if the alternative, which was if President Trump did not win, we would have paid this higher cost through meaningful hikes in income taxes. So it was kind of a pick your poison type thing. And I think the tariffs are less toxic poison than an income tax hike would have been. Next question. If the USD leaves the US, wouldn't that mean Federal Reserve has to print more, causing inflation while boosting something like a third of Mexico's economy? No, because that'd just be less dollars chasing the same amount of goods and services, which would be inherently deflationary. The Fed doesn't have to print more as long as they print the amount of seniorage needed to keep the deficit afloat and bond yields low enough. I don't think the capital outflows would cause any sort of inflationary impulse. I mean, let me know what you think if I'm wrong on this, but that's kind of my answer to that question. Any chance you'll come to Michigan? Where in Michigan? I mean, I really like northern Michigan, like the area around Mackinac Island and the Upper Peninsula, but it's very low populated, and I don't think I could get a meetup in enough size to make it worthwhile to go to Analyzing Finance with Nick meetup of Mackinac Island. Like in Detroit, I've thought about, but like the Midwest, the places we've done so far are Chicago, which we probably will go back to in 2026, which is probably the closest place realistically we're going to go to into Western Michigan. We might do one in Wisconsin next year. And I'm also considered Louisville, Kentucky, or also the other Midwestern places that are likely to be meetups next year are Kansas City and Omaha. So I think it's unlikely unless if I get a surge of interest, like based on the surveys that you guys have voted on for this, we haven't really seen that much interest for Michigan or Indiana. It's been more in the Midwest. It's been heavily dominated by Chicago, with Minneapolis being a distant second. So, and I have other reasons I want to go to Kansas City. and Omaha. So that's why I'm likely to have meetups there. But for Midwest, it'll probably be Kansas City, Omaha, and Chicago. What's it called? Hey, Nick, you're doing a great job. What countries are good to run away and start your life over if you're bored in America? Thanks. You are the best. Well, how much money do you have to play with? Do you need a job? Do you have a family to support? Are you going to buy property, or do you have any sort of like responsibilities? Are you going to take your family with you? I mean, that's just a little bit too vague of a question, really, that just simply on where should I go just to bug out. And also, what's your climate preferences too? Yeah, I mean, I don't really, that's a big difference too, because you might be miserable in a place, even if it's good for taxes or good for business environment. But if you have no social ties and you don't enjoy like a very hot climate or a very cold climate, you're probably going to be miserable. So yeah, I mean, there's too many choices to narrow it down to one place. And like if I had an unlimited financial situation and I wanted to start over, I'd probably go to Switzerland, but I am personally biased on that. What's it called? The next question is, what's your opinion about meme coins? I don't really talk about crypto or even specific investments. That's just my disclaimer. I'm not going to talk about specific trade ideas or specific investment advice. If you want help with that, please contact me directly via my consultation form or by scheduling a call with me. Like I run a wealth management firm for a living, and so that's kind of what I do for my clients. But crypto, I mean, meme coins are just basically gambling, in my opinion. I don't really think that's in the investment category. Favorite 80s film? I'd have to think about that because, yeah, I have to like probably Return of the Jedi. Like if I had to guess, because I do like the old Star Wars movies. Back to the Future is a good 80s movie as well. Back to the Future 2. Field of Dreams. Yeah, those. I mean, it's Free Willy in 80s or early 90s. I don't remember exactly when that came out, but that was like my first favorite movie as a kid. But yeah, I'd say most of my favorite movies are more 90s than 80s. But like if I had to narrow it down, those are probably some of the top 80s films. Let's see. But inflation, though, is caused, Bev, by money spent within your economy. So even if they do convert it, that might weaken the US dollar, but if it's in big enough numbers, but it's not really directly spent on unless if like, and again, a lot of the key drivers that cause inflation are more domestically produced. What's the best book to read on an introduction on finance or economics for someone new on the subject? Yeah, so when it comes to that, I have a reading list that if you join my free version of my Substack, you get that has my top 100 books really about finance and economics. There's a few places you can start, like for like One Up on Wall Street by Peter Lynch is a classic one. You can read about for economics, maybe for Austrian economics 1 Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. I mean, I don't know if there's a single book that covers every topic of economics or finance. I usually I read a book about each piece and kind of put them together. Market Wizards, if you want to be more inspired about trading. It's not really like, it's more of an inspirational read than an educational one, though. But yeah. Okay, so now you've given me a follow-up, John. I can muster up $50,000 and have nothing tied in the U.S. but my parents and my brother. I prefer to be somewhere on the warmer side. I will need a job. I have no certs. Well, that's kind of the last problem right there. Is like, if you have no degree or no sort of qualifications, why would you get hired like in one of these countries at a wage above subsistence? Like that's kind of the root of your problem. Um, and unless you have some business idea that will do well enough and keep you afloat, I would kind of say that you need to first prepare yourself a little bit better, because anywhere it's worth going, I mean, you need to have at least a good education or employable skills or a business idea. Um, so yeah, I mean, if I was a young guy with a degree and $50,000 and like some sort of employable skill for companies, the places I would probably consider going right now would be like um, Singapore would probably be one of them. Um, Wages are high, and you can capture on a little bit of Asian growth out there um, without having to go directly into living directly in certain countries that might be a little bit of a geopolitical risk to do so, or have too much of a culture shock. I think maybe like if you can get like a work remote job, like Spain or Portugal wouldn't be a terrible places to go. I mean, I would say Switzerland, but you don't like cold. And like Cayman Islands would, if it might be a little bit boring, but it's high paying jobs in tropical place. Latin America, if you didn't have to depend on a job and were more entrepreneurial, might not be a terrible idea, but the salaries in Latin America likely aren't high enough to be worthwhile to go if you're trying to build a life from scratch, like, and have a job. Unless like, or maybe if you have a remote job, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of my take on that. How long do you think the Federal Reserve Chairman is going to be implementing AI? I mean, they might use it for their research. They probably already are, to help speed up like any sort of research activities, or on the banking regulation side, they might use it to do better stress tests or find certain things in their balance sheets that might be red flags. But in terms of like open market operations and monetary policy, like will Fed determine interest rates based on AI? I don't think that's coming, because they basically strip their own power from themselves. And I don't really ever see politicians voluntarily stripping power from themselves. So I don't think that's likely. Have you ever gotten to day trading? If so, you recommend it? No, I've never really gotten into day trading personally, and I would not recommend it just because the odds of you succeeding are quite low. And with technical analysis, which is what most day trading is based off of, generally the shorter the time frames for technical patterns, the weaker they are, and the more likely they have sharp reversals that work against you. What about Africa? I mean, Africa is probably a good opportunity for a private equity investor who has social connections in Africa. But for somebody to build a life in Africa, given I don't think it's a great idea. The low GB per capita base likely means you're too expensive to hire, unless if you and you also have the largest economies in Africa, like South Africa and Egypt and Nigeria are relatively the most dysfunctional ones. And the rest of the countries, yeah, they might be great to visit, but I don't think there are that many great economic opportunities for non-locals without enough capital to be like to make meaningful direct investments. I enjoyed your base camp collabs. It was an unexpected crossover. Do you enjoy delving into cultural topics more than focus exclusively on economics? I like to figure out if there's an economic driver to cultural things. Like my recent video I did about weddings is kind of a prime example of that, and why people spend so much more on weddings now than in the past. A lot of people just think it's purely cultural or purely economic, but it's kind of a mix of both. And I find that kind of topic very interesting, and I'll probably do more of those type of videos in the future. And like I would also like to do more debates with other content creators who have different ideas on me on these kind of stuff. whether from the right or from the left, because it's I think it makes for very interesting conversations. But yeah, I think so. I think that you'll probably see some more of that indirectly. Like I've already know I've recorded some videos related to that, but I'm also going to try to bring more purely finance stuff too. Like I still will do social class stuff when I have the ideas for it, but not every single video I'm going to do is related to old money or class, because it's kind of a limited topic. What would World War III that involves the U.S. mean? An economic crash, or do the rich have sufficiently built up infrastructure? I mean, if there's World War III involving the U.S., we'll have a lot more to worry about than finance and economics, to be honest. I mean, I don't see World War III without it going nuclear. And so therefore, we may either not be alive, or it's going to be just a total wipeout, unless you are living in like some remote corners of the southern hemisphere. Yeah, what do you think about the macro dynamics of modern society with pools of liquidity existing in new places like crypto, retail, gift cards, collectibles, shoes, arts, and even video game items? It's just a product of just too loose monetary policy going into speculative assets. You haven't had a long recession to basically you haven't had a prolonged recession since the great financial crisis, and that's usually when these excesses get purged out, and they will get purged out again, unless if you believe we live in a post-recessionary world that you can always have continuous economic growth without these things happening. Let's see. Do you think we are heading for an economic depression? No, I do not. I think it's more likely than not that we have a mild recession that cleans out a lot of the speculative excess. But I don't see a depression happening. Depression, by definition, is like 2 or 3 straight years of extreme contractions in the economy that results in a permanent like reset of living standards downward. Examples of that would be like the Great Depression in the U.S., what happened in Argentina several times due to hyperinflations, most recently in the mid-2010s, the Greek debt crisis and its aftermath has caused basically a Great Depression in Greece. But I don't think that we're going to see anything like that in the United States. Yeah. And we have an updated Bitcoin video. I'm wondering what I should diversify into it. I don't really have any updated thoughts on Bitcoin, so I don't really see that video coming anytime soon. Do you think, let's see, what would you see the economic consequences of interracial marriage and dating coming down the pike? No, we're not going to see that video, because I don't think there really is like that much to say when it comes to that. That's different than other forms of dating. I did my video on class and dating, and I'm going to do a video more on general marriage, but coming up, and the economics of what social classes get married, which ones don't. So yeah, that's not coming. Let's see. What if automation leads to rapidly high unemployment while simultaneously intelligence gets commoditized? Yeah, I mean, well, those are kind of the same thing. Like automation leads to high unemployment is because of intelligence getting commoditized to a certain degree. It's just a matter of what type of intelligence does get commoditized. That's really the big question here. Yeah, I mean, and how deep it gets. I'm going to do a bonus video for my members that I did a speech about this here in Orange County a few months ago, about this very topic. Is basically, has the minimum IQ to have a job risen because of AI? And if so, what are the implications of that? Or I'm going to go into it fully. But yeah, I mean, AI is going to have two sides to it. On one side, it's going to disrupt a lot of rote white collar type work and a lot of pseudo intellectual jobs that basically do require some sort of brain power and thinking, but not really creative or independent thinking in a way. And that will kind of disrupt the economy. But on the other side, it's going to be able to create a lot more operating leverage and economies of scale for people who, with previously couldn't have it with a lot less resources. If you could buy a humanoid robot for the cost of a car to do manual labor, and you could use LLMs and other AIs to automate a lot of white collar labor, you could run like a multinational corporation with under 10 people. Like individual families can have dominant companies and industries. And it's going to be kind of like the modern version of the yeoman farmer. That's like the optimistic vision for AI. It could cause the freedom from a job, not just the loss of a job. It's kind of like how the Industrial Revolution kind of is the inverse. The Industrial Revolution commoditized everybody and eliminated the craftsman, because with industrial scale factories, you can just make things at a much larger scale and therefore at a much lower price. Whereas AI commoditizing the labor, you can do the reverse. You can go back to more of the artisans, and now all these old artisans have infinite scale, like a factory would have. So that's kind of the other perspective here you guys should all really be thinking about. So if you're worried about AI replacing your job, think about if you can be on the other side, what can you use AI to magnify your existing talents and capabilities? You want to be the person replacing others with AI, not the one being replaced by somebody else with AI. Yeah. Let's see. Next question. Are we seeing a reckoning in certain industries with new entrants finally forcing monopolistic corporations like Boeing or Lockheed to reckon with lack of innovation? Yeah, I do. I think that companies like Anduril or AeroVironment and these smaller, like up and coming defense contractors are going to have a strong potential to take away market share from the big boys. Like the Ukraine war, what has it shown us is that you can have a lot more asymmetric warfare, and like these really big, clunky, old school style like artillery and tanks and fighter jets might not be as viable and can be destroyed by a much cheaper set of drones, and allow more asymmetric warfare. Also, in general, the military is coming increasingly unmanned. And so are these big defense companies are the leaders, the ones who are going to be able to lead this, or is it going to be a more robotics focused emerging defense company in the future that will be the new leader? The other thing too is the U.S. fiscal situation is not good. I'm actually doing a video that's coming out tomorrow that my colleague Murphy McCann at our LA meetup a few weeks ago presented the deficit problem, and just basically how it cannot really be solved just by raising taxes or little cuts here and there. You're going to have a defense cuts. And if you don't want to lose the ability to project power, you need to be able to have a military that can just run more efficiency. That's kind of the point that we're going to have to do. So and so therefore contracts are going to have to be smaller. And will defense contractors adapt? I think they will, but it's going to leave openings for more emerging companies who don't have as big of bloat in terms of like pensions or like just large workforces. They're building factories and production sites in impractical places to swing a congressional district one way or another to be a job creator. Like that kind of stuff's probably going away. And you're going to have to be it's going to be a more competitive industry. So that's my take. How do you choose your investments? Well, again, I'm not going to get into specific investing advice or my investment process on the live streams. But like, yeah, there's been, to keep it general though, I do a mix of like deep dive research. My approach is a mix of value investing and top down macroeconomic analysis. I want to find where like the hockey puck is going in several parts of the economy, but I want to find the best quality companies to do so. And I look at stuff that is distressed or beaten down and seeing like if the reasons why a stock is down is because they of a structural and fundamental impairment, or is it because just a sentiment driven or non-economic selling, and to try to pick up opportunities that way as well. Um, what degree do you believe that elites guide world events? I think that that's a tough question. I think there are certain times that, like, there is the great man theory of history. There are some times where there's just a force of will that changes the narrative. And then there are other times where society is trending a certain way anyway, and political leaders just try to catch the wave and just let themselves be used as like the sail to enact the change going that direction. I think technologists are underrated because usually most cultural and economic changes are driven by technological changes first. Um, and then all the other things kind of happen as a derivative of that. And I think a lot of cultural changes happen because of economic changes, and economic changes happen because of technological changes and structural issues in terms of things like demographics, politics, etc. That in the way that and that institutions operate in societies. So the first step is probably technological development, then institutional development, then economic development, and then political development. No, then cultural development. Sorry, and last but not least, political development. In that order. Um, let's see. Do you believe in taking more risk at an early age? I see a lot of people with average income being very diversified in multiple index, and I wonder if that's the best strategy or not. Um, it depends what you mean by risk, like putting all your money in a single stock, or buying more stocks versus bonds, or um, like career and personal risk. You have to choose what kind of risk you want to take in life generally. Um, I think that young people generally should take more risk, because if you lose everything, you can come back a lot easier. And it's not really just a age thing, it's a stage of the life thing. Like a single person can afford to take a lot more risk than a married person, than a parent can, in that order. So that's a variable too. But the thing is that you don't want to take too many risks at the same time so you get completely wiped out. Like if you're going very hard and very risky in your career, like you decide to quit your job and start a business, I'd probably be more conservative with my investments, because I might need to tap that cash in the future to finance my personal working capital when my company's not making a profit. Or if you have a boring, stable job, on the other hand, that you know you're not going to get fired and your pay raises are predictable, then maybe you should take more investment risk because you're not really taking any risk in your career. And that's kind of how I would kind of put it. But I mean, I'm generally am in the camp of people should take more probably career risk and less investment risk in their youth than the other way around, because at your age you have more human capital than financial capital. And so that's where you're going to get the bigger ROI. Um, let's see. Next question. What are your thoughts on remote workers being overemployed, secretly working multiple jobs? I think it's a real thing and a real issue. And um, there's two ways that companies can react to this. They can either crack down on it if they really need somebody for a full-time commitment. And I think the technology is getting better to crack down on this kind of thing. Or they can embrace it and just, if somebody can find a way to do their job at a third of like the time, then um, the company should actually bring that person on as a consultant and figure out how to make other job roles efficient. And then in the future, hire the next generation of people that used to be a full-time job, make it a part-time job, or even replace it with AI. So I mean, that's probably what I would do. If like I found out a bunch of my employees were working multiple jobs, what's it called? I would basically say, hey, look, you need to come to the office and explain this process to me. And if you don't, I'm going to fire you, and see if I can make my company more efficient. And I don't know, maybe I'd keep that guy to do that, or if not, then I would just be able to do more with less in the future. But again, I haven't really had to deal with that in my industry yet. In general, though, like if you really, the other thing is that if they're doing what they're supposed to do and they get the output done, does it matter if they're overemployed? That's the other kind of issue with this. Like, and if they can do their stuff easily overemployed, then maybe again, you should put them on some sort of freelance contract that you pay them a little bit more hourly, but give them less hours. And that's kind of my take on this. And you should basically, and I think people should generally be paid for results more than just raw time. Like, I don't think somebody who's more efficient at their job should be punished for doing so. In fact, they should probably be rewarded. And I don't think that people who are slower and more inefficient should be rewarded for just doing the same amount of stuff in more hours. But yeah, that's kind of my rough take on that. Do you believe labor laws will be changed to benefit employers? Like which labor laws will be? I think eventually, yes, I think they'll have to be, because especially in places like Europe, where the labor laws are so uncompetitive that they're literally killing their societies. I'm doing some research about the economic future of Italy and the Netherlands. And the main problem with a lot of these European countries is simply just these overly restrictive and regulatory labor laws that are slowly killing their societies for a variety of reasons. So, yeah, that's kind of, I think in the US, you might not see much change because we have a fairly free labor rules. I think that the one good thing the Biden administration did was ban non-competes and free up the labor market that much more. So I think it should be free to benefit both employers and employees. So I generally think that the labor market laws will have, in the places where labor is just too restrictive, needs to come down. You'll notice, look at the places that have higher unemployment rates despite a growing economy, or look at the places that have slower wage growth or just high youth unemployment rates. High youth unemployment rate is kind of a symptom for an overly regulated labor market. Let's see. Maybe not purely economic question, but I'd like your opinion. What are your thoughts on the Online Digital Safety Act in the UK and similar acts in others by other states? Is that basically just the idea of like age verification for certain websites? I could kind of I think the IDs thing, there is kind of a risk of like privacy. So I could kind of see that side, but at the same time, it's probably the most fair way to regulate that corner of the internet. I mean, if people had a better idea of how to, I don't think leaving it unregulated is a better solution. I'm open to better solutions, but that's kind of banning encryption and privacy. I don't like WhatsApp messages or DMs or just like anywhere. Like if a company, for example, like YouTube wants to make everybody have to use their full names on their channels, they have a right to do that as a business, but it would probably lose a lot of their contributors and commenters and engagement if they did so. So I don't think the government should be getting rid of encryption or anything like that. They can just have a warrant like any other type of search. Like if you think there's something suspicious going on. Let's see. Have you read Mark Minervini's investment books? Yeah, I've read at least one of them. I don't really remember entirely what it was about, though, to be quite honest. But I have read at least one of his books. Let's see. The issue with office work is that it's notoriously puffed by time wasters, so efficient people get more done, less go unnoticed unless when they're not monitored. What do you think of technical analysis on charts? I see people online make it seem profitable, but I think it's hard to believe. I think they're more useful as a risk management tool than solely a trade idea tool. Like I just think like trading solely based on technicals is not really the best way to go. I think you need to have fundamentals to decide what things you select investing in, and you use technicals to help you manage your entry and exit points. What is your take on IQ? Do you believe that's a big part of why you succeed is because your IQ? Honestly, I do think IQ is a big role of why I've succeeded, but that's because I have other issues that probably would have held me down if I didn't have a high IQ. Like for people who are maybe neurodivergent, they need a higher IQ to make up for their neurodivergence. For neurotypical people, I think a high IQ is still important, but it's less important. But yeah, I mean, I think you have to have it above a certain level to be a functioning member of society. But there are other traits that are just as important, if not more important, in certain aspects, like basic people skills, persistence, generally willingness not to quit, which I think is the most underrated kind of skill in the modern economy. Like I see so many people here on YouTube, whether they're sociology YouTubers, psychology YouTubers, economics YouTubers, like the whole broad social commentary category here on politics. And they all tell you about why everything is so bad, why the economy is so bad, why social life is so bad, why you're poorer than your parents, why you're never going to afford anything, why you can't do this, why the job market is awful, whatever is the case. And it's like they're all just pushing this message that like you should just give up, nothing is worth pursuing, everything sucks. And that by buying into that, and so you can think about that in a bad day, you can feel that way. I've had bad days where I've felt that way, but you can't let that narrative actually cause you to quit. Like, I think a lot of the reason why I'm here today doing this live stream, and I'm going to do a speech more about this on my Washington, D.C. meetup where I go into the full details about it. So if you want to come learn about this type of topic, come see me in Washington on September 18th. Yeah, the thing is though, a lot of my success is probably due to just not quitting. Like if you look at the percentage of people who don't quit and the percentage of people who make it eventually, it's very similar. Like there are some people who will succeed due to other circumstances, but there's also people who never quit and fail. But I think those probably will wash. And so, yeah, I generally am just tired. Maybe because I've watched too much YouTube now, and because I'm a YouTuber. But I'm just tired of this message of people quitting. You don't have to be like this Gary V like hustle bro who works 24 hours a day. I'm not really saying that. Like you can have a balanced life, but you just can't quit. And sometimes you might need to adjust the plan. I think Jeff Bezos had a really good quote on this. It's like, you have the end frame in mind, but you can always pivot and change how you get there. And so, yeah, that's kind of my take on a lot of this. I think that is the most underrated skill really now. I used to say sales and people skills, but I think society has kind of caught on to that. And so now I think it's just quitting. And just not quitting and being persistent and just like, yeah, if you told me last year I'd be talking to thousands of people on the internet and going on tour across the world, meeting them, and like, I would have laughed at you. And also, like, if you told me 5 years ago, I would have pivoted away from the hedge fund world to starting a more conventional RIA and being more successful at that than I ever was as a hedge fund analyst. I would be laughing at you too. But you know what? Sometimes life works in that way. But yeah, Mech, I'm curious about your thoughts on Monero. In some ways, it's the most powerful currency ever to exist. I mean, isn't it just kind of like the black market version of like the other cryptocurrencies? That's all I really know about it. In theory, since it is more private, shouldn't it have more of that like secrecy value? I haven't seen a Monero chart in 8 years or so. So I have no really understanding. I'm not a crypto guy, but that's kind of my take on it. I recall you said you're bullish in Chicago in the mid to long term. Why do you feel that way? I think Illinois is a bottom 5 states and is trouble. Well, I mean, the thing is that if you're already on top, it's kind of hard to move up. Like the way, again, amazing, like inner value investor coming out again. So like inner value, like it's like you try to look at things if they're distressed. Why are they distressed? And if you look at the state of Illinois and Chicago, why is it distressed? It's mainly because of bad and corrupt politics and um what and basic and its industry hollowing out because of bad politics, and weather I think has something to do with it. But if you look at it, the fundamentals are there. It's very um, cheap to live in Chicago for how many cultural amenities it has. Uh, if you want to like live in like a big world city like a New York, L.A., Dallas, well, a lesser degree, or like your European Asian equivalents with that level of like density and cultural amenities and like all of like public transportation infrastructure, et cetera. Chicago is is the most affordable way to do that possibly in the entire world, especially relative to wages. And like it also has plenty of water in a place in a world where you might have water shortages in the future. It also, so I think those are kind of two drivers in a world where cost of living and resource scarcity might be a problem in the future. Chicago doesn't have to deal with that. Um, and like the issue really is politics if they could ever be reformed. But if more and more people kind of move out of Illinois, or the ones who stay kind of see the problem of it, I mean, it's eventually people are going to wake up and there's going to be reform in the city. And Illinois has low state income taxes. They have high sales and property taxes, but it's not like California and New York in terms of the state income tax side of things too, which also is kind of a beneficiary for Chicago and Illinois. I mean, again, Chicago has all the infrastructure as a airport. That's probably the second most like destination to think of any airport you can get to nonstop in the U.S. I think Dallas Fort Worth is the only one ahead of it. It's got all the major sports teams. It's got a great restaurant scene. It has a lot of cultural amenities. It has a lot of major companies that are still based out of there and operate out there, and it has affordable housing prices. And it still is kind of the cultural hub of the Midwest. I think there's some opportunities with Chicago still. I just personally, if Chicago had the same weather as San Francisco, I would live there, but I just can't handle extreme winters personally. Um, let's see. Next question. I kind of got into a rant about Chicago. Thoughts on the Obama administration? I'm not really a fan of the Obama administration. Like, I think that he was able to look a lot better than he did because he came in right at the bottom of the economy, pretty much when he got elected. Right within 2 months of his inauguration, the Fed started QE, and kind of the rest is history. It comes to the financial markets. Um, I think he did some things to basically make the country a lower trust society, and we're living through the consequences of that today on the social and cultural side of things. And economically, I think Obamacare created a lot of mal incentives in the health insurance industry that was already filled with mal incentives. And so, yeah. And I think that's kind of my take on the Obama administration. Uh, let's see. Next question. Um, pri- Let's see if I missed any questions here. Are colleges becoming institutions? White collar jobs make as much skilled technicians and 2-year degrees, and immigration laws are hindering research. Well, I mean, I'm actually going to talk about that actually on my Boston presentation. I'm going to be talking about the economic future of Massachusetts and Boston when I speak there. And Boston is a city I'm not quite so bullish on because it's Boston kind of all these like old Northeastern and Midwestern cities kind of able to play their hand the best in the deindustrialization path of the late 20th century and the early 21st century. And they kind of rebranded themselves as like the world's biggest college town. And basically relied on like the university economy, particularly driven by Harvard and MIT, to kind of carry that city, and like the venture capital economy that derived around it, the wealth from the endowments generated from those universities over the years. A lot of the Harvard and MIT grads staying there and doing research, and that's those scientific innovations kind of going into Boston, or those graduates working at the big Boston-based insurance companies and mutual funds. But I think the main real risk for college is not really what AI. I think the main risk for college is something simpler. It's called the enrollment cliff. You actually hear the most on YouTube about the enrollment cliff in college sports YouTube channels, because it's driving a lot of the conference realignment stuff. But more the idea is that because of low birth rates for the last 20 years or so, you are going to have much lower sizes of cohorts going to college. Like the peak graduating class in terms of size of college, I think was 2013. So not much longer after I finished college was the peak of the homegrown college graduates in terms of like a class and a cohort. And every year since, it has trickled down, even with inflows of international students. It has trickled down because there are simply just less 18-year-olds who want to go to college every year. And it's not helped by the fact that you have a lot of sentiment, particularly in conservative circles, saying college is a waste of time. You shouldn't go. You should go into the trades. Even if that wasn't a thing, and like we still had the 2007 idea that everybody should go to college, you still would have less amount of people going to college than 20 years ago. Why? Because there's just simply less of people being born who are college age. And until birth rates rise, or you see like people going to college mid-career to change careers, like if it becomes a thing, say, to get a second bachelor's to adjust because AI has replaced your job, that might be that's the other possibility. I don't see like a 40-year-old spending $200,000 to go to college to pivot their job, whereas they can probably get that education at a much more cost-effective rate at that age, and probably can't afford to give up the income and live the college person lifestyle for 4 years in their 40s and 50s. So I think really the enrollment cliff is what is driving the college issue. And I don't really see that being solved by any magical problem. I think you're going to see a lot of smaller universities shut down outright. I think you'll see universities have to cut prices, and also the student loan cap from the OBBA is going to help with that too. Now there's actually pricing pressure because there's the same amount of slots at colleges for competing for less students, and borrowing caps mean that there's less money available to spend on tuition and college costs. So if anything, yeah, the business model is going to change. I don't think it's going to die outright. They're going to have to lower prices and readjust to become a greater value proposition, because they can't just rely on larger cohorts going to college just because of raw numbers. They need to make it a good value proposition to have the holdouts go to college. So yeah, I'm going to talk more about that though in my Boston speech. So if you want to learn more about that, come see me in Boston. Let's see. Next question. What's it called? Yeah, the lower trust society is more just his rhetoric and his political strategy to garner like votes in a certain way to like make people dislike other certain groups because of their ideology or that they're different from you. Like it's not a coincidence that the woke thing came around right around in the wake of Obama's 2012 presidential campaign. Yeah, and in terms of the Obamacare, there's a few examples. I did a good video series with a guy named Austin Walters, is a VC based in Utah and helps in healthcare. And basically the problem with Obamacare that is kind of understated is that they put gross margin caps on health insurance companies. So health insurance companies couldn't become more profitable by being more efficient because they had a gross margin cap. So they had to make that 10 or 15% of their top line bigger by spending more on gross. As you could see, that'd be a pro. So because 15% of $1 billion is more than 15% of 500 million. And that's how they increase their profits. Like health insurance industry is actually a very low margin business. And part of it is regulatory reasons. There's minimum payout requirements, but but there are other structural issues. And that is one of them that you have really and then there's a bunch of other examples, but I'm not really qualified to discuss that because I don't have a medical science background. Let's see. And thank you for the coffee, McNello, by the way. I appreciate the support. Do you think there is resistance against the race to the bottom? If bad practices are the most successful and profitable, do you think anybody can or should resist it? Like, in what industry? For one. Two, I don't think race to the bottom is always the most successful or profitable, especially if you're a smaller company. And more like, I mean, a lot of big companies think it's the easy way. And if you're being judged on quarterly earnings reports and your stock moves on those every 3 months and you're not judged on long-term vision, that's tempting to do. But then that's why a lot of these companies eventually get outcompeted, because in the end, better quality goods and services ultimately win. And stuff that might become lower cost is more cost efficiency ultimately wins, unless if there's government regulation to prevent that from coming in. So no, I don't think things are inherently a race to the bottom. On a socio-cultural issue, there's something called prole drift, which I'm going to do some more videos about in the Old Money series. It's about how bad habits from like the lower classes move up into the higher parts of society. But that's not inevitable either. Like there's really nothing really inevitable about human action. People have the ability to make choices. There are certain pressures that lead things to certain ways, but yeah. And you can resist it, and you probably should resist it if you're a startup or a founder of a company, because you want to have, you need to provide better quality at a more efficient price point. Because it's very hard to compete slowly on price unless if you're innovating some really groundbreaking technology that is just makes stuff that way cheaper than anything else. You either need to make something that is 90% cheaper than the market or 90% better than the market if you want to compete. And the latter is easier than the former as an entrepreneur, from an entrepreneur's perspective. Let's see. Yeah, and you're right about the AMA keeping supply of doctors low. That's another real issue. Yeah. Let's see. And a lot of your examples of like shrinkflation and putting ads on already paid services, again, are more common among megacorps who are managing their business more for quarterly earnings reports than longer term outcomes. So, yeah. And the other thing is that the market prefers lower prices over or higher quality. And so like people need to be willing to either pay more if they want to avoid shrinkflation for the same thing, but people aren't, or they have to willing to pay a premium to avoid certain inconveniences, or you have to accept them and have a lower price. There are trade-offs. It's economics, to be quite honest. But yeah, inflation is mainly caused due to money supply increasing faster than supply of goods and services. And I've talked several videos about inflation. That's more of a government problem, not a business problem. Yeah, it's just shrinkflation is just kind of a sneaky way to deal with the structural inflation issues. And yeah, you could simply just opt out of certain things that if they don't make sense financially, and businesses will take a hit and they will notice and adapt. Examples of what's going on with fast food. Fast food traffic is declining because fast food prices are now almost the same as a sit-down restaurant. So why would somebody, I mean, convenience is a benefit, but would I pay almost the same price for convenience for a lower quality food than going to a sit down restaurant or even cooking at home. Yeah, then so now fast food restaurants are having to adjust by making lower price options again. So these things have a self correcting mechanism to a certain degree. Um, let's see. Yeah. Do you think the part of the adoption obstacles to EV are facing due to the average age of a new car buyer being older? These older people are more likely to have difficulty adapting to new tech. As somebody who has driven both an EV and an ICE car in his lifetime, I don't think that's the issue, really. I mean, I know plenty of people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who are driving EVs. Um, the bigger real issue with EVs is that they just aren't well suited for certain environments. Like in Southern California is a great market for EVs because it's not really much of a road trip culture here. Like if you want to go to anywhere really outside of the outside of an EV single charge per drive, there's not that you're gonna have to drive all the way to San Francisco, Las Vegas, or Scottsdale, Arizona, and those drives are not very practical for EVs. But it's not very frequently to drive that far if you're somebody who lives in like San Diego or Greater Los Angeles. Like you can drive to Santa Barbara or Palm Desert or San Diego or the north part of LA, or within that whole area easily within a single charge, and there and back it is most likely within a single charge. And then you have EVs tend to also do better in more mild climates. So California, it makes more sense to have EV than in other places. And a lot of people in California still live in more single family homes. It's where you can park your car in your garage and just charge it. Like, I don't think I'd want to have an EV if I lived in like New York City, but I don't think I'd even have a car if I lived in New York City, though, to be quite frank, or something that dense. But the general idea is that the problem with EVs is that they don't make sense for large parts of the country. Like, same reason why you don't see Mercedes and BMWs in Montana. Luxury cars tend not to do well in brutal weather conditions. And it's the same thing with EVs. The battery and the cars break down faster if you have to deal with elements. And that's probably, if anything, the thing is that they kind of got saturated in the markets where they provide value proposition, like California. And it's been hard for it to spread elsewhere because they're just not practical. And like the other thing is the battery length too. Like in rural areas, people have to drive longer. And I don't want to do a road trip. And a lot of people want to have a car in case if they go on a road trip. And I would never want to drive on a road trip on an EV because, like, what if I run out of battery in the middle of nowhere and get stuck, or I have to plan out every charging station on the way, which sounds really annoying, to be quite honest. And you have to spend at least 30 minutes sitting in some place you don't want to be, and you have to be there just to charge to keep on your road trip. So, like, that's the range thing. Like, if you had, I don't know, a 500-mile range for EVs, I think you would see adoption go up a lot. Or if charging just became faster, if you had like the ability to charge an EV as fast as you can fill up gas, or even like 5 minutes instead of 30 plus minutes, then I think EVs would be more adopted because a lot of ways they're more convenient. There's less like routine maintenance for a lot of these than traditional ICE cars, and you can charge it at home instead of having to go. You only need to use the charging station if you're going on road trips or you live in a place where you don't have you don't have your own garage to charge the car, like you live in an apartment or something like that. So there's actually a lot of advantages to EVs. The acceleration is generally better. They're not as noisy. So there are perks to it, but yeah, there's some few technological things that need to be fixed. And then all people are concerned about the resale value. Like a lot of people are more likely to lease EVs because they I probably should just do a video about this because I'm doing so much talk about EVs. Because the batteries, once they're dead, which is about 10 years on average, the car is inherently worthless unless you spend tens of thousands of dollars replacing the battery. So they need to have batteries like a service, kind of like propane tanks in a barbecue that you just shuffle them out occasionally, or batteries that last considerably longer. So that's the other kind of issue. So that's my take on why EVs aren't adopted. Sorry. In 2008, Austrian economists called for high consumer price inflation resulting from QE. Why do you think they got the call so wrong? I don't think they entirely got it wrong. I think they got it partially wrong. It didn't show up in a lot of the inflation statistics for certain, because the way that they calculated the inflation statistics, mainly because housing is calculated via owner's equivalent rent, which is basically the idea that the BLS calls the landlord and is like, "Hey, Nick, how much did you rent your apartment or your house to your tenants this year? And how did that compare to last year?" And and they do it for somebody who doesn't own, like they do it for somebody who's an owner occupier. They ask that question. If you're an owner occupier, you just assume it's just the same as the mortgage payment because you're not thinking about the rental market. And so that's kind of the fundamental problem. Whereas housing prices were going up way higher than inflation, but it wasn't, and rents were going up way higher than inflation, but that wasn't calculated properly because it was measured via owner's equivalent rent. So I think the idea that inflation was super low in the 2010s was kind of misleading. It was higher than what they said it was. You didn't get like the hyperinflation that people feared about because there was no direct transmission of money. It was indirect. And we went to banks who used that to have cheaper financing. So it mainly impacted investments in the housing market. But it didn't. But the thing is that the housing market is a big driver of inflation. So it did increase inflation substantially, but maybe inflation, I'm just throwing out random numbers because I don't have the stats on me, but let's just say that the government's numbers said it was like 2% inflation over that time. Maybe it was closer to 3.5 to 4 over that time. And yeah, that sounds like a small difference, but the inflation was there. So I think they were kind of right. But they got it mainly wrong because it didn't happen as quickly because like it did in the 2020s, simply just because with the 2020s, the money was directly transferred to people in the form of helicopter money, whether that's paying people not to work, which is a double whammy because you reduce supply and increase demand at the same time by doing that, and or stimulus checks. That created more inflation because it was a more direct transmission, whereas the QE was indirect, and a lot of it kind of just stayed within the investor class, shuffling it around, or within the banks because they had to recover their balance sheets. So that's why it wasn't as bad as expected. Let's see. Have you done a video about Roman economics? No. I mean, I don't think it would. I think there'd be a lot better people to do that video. The Roman economy was simply a plunder economy where they conquered far reaches of the empire, brought that money back to Rome, and spent it on conspicuous consumption, or to buy slaves or do whatever they were going to do with it. They didn't really invest in like modern forms of capital. Like the closest thing to like large scale business, maybe some wealthy noble had like a winery on a villa. But yeah, there's basically mostly small business enterprises, if there were any, and people living on the grain dole or people in the military. And in order for the legions to keep getting financed, they needed to keep conquering more and taking that plunder because tax revenue wasn't enough. And once the empire stopped expanding, the whole model fell apart. That's really kind of a summary of Roman economics. What's your opinion on the death tax? I'm generally against it because people already paid that tax in their life through the income tax. Like if you had no income taxes, yeah, I'd be for a death tax. But it's double taxation fundamentally. But the thing is that the estate tax thresholds are so high right now that a lot of people are covered from that at this point, post Big Beautiful Bill Act. I think in general, I don't like the treatment of gift taxes versus estate taxes. Like, why can't you just use the gift tax, the estate tax exemption over one's life, and you give gifts now to your children when they need them to buy a house or pay for college or um, like get married or stuff like that, instead of having to wait to give the money when you're dead for tax purposes, and then by the time your children get it, they're in their 60s and they've already on their way to retirement and don't need the money as urgently when they could have used it a lot more when they were starting out their lives. So yeah, I have more of a problem with the gift tax than I do the estate tax, and I think it should be reallocated kind of in that way. um, How do you solve the housing shortage when the local communities have power over zoning? These communities benefit directly from shortages they cause. Well, yeah, that's just NIMBYism. And you basically need to bulldoze those regulations, whether on the state level or the federal level. Um, you don't need to turn every neighborhood into high-rise districts. If you just like increase the housing supply in some of these cities by 5 to 10%, that'd be enough to put a real shock into the market, especially with populations no longer growing in most cities in America. So, and there's a lot of easily stuff that could be reused, but it's just there's these laws that make things either historical places or environmental restrictions that people argue that they're doing it for like environmental causes or to preserve history and culture, but it's really just like blatant NIMBYism in disguise. That stuff needs to be put to an end. It's like you can't have both worlds. You can't have like a society that you want to grow and you want people to have young families and you want it to be dynamic and you want a advancing economy, and then at the same time design your cities to have inherent implicit population caps. That's a contradictory goal set, and that's kind of part of the problem. I think a lot of this is going to naturally solve itself with the boomers passing away and lower birth rates that happened over several generations, creating these giant gluts. It's going to probably cause a waterfall in the housing market. I did 2 videos about this called one was called Housing Isn't Expensive, You're Just Poor. And then the other one was about, which I posted recently as a post where I went more into it, is about how I think a lot of this is a self-correcting problem fundamentally. Like the only way they're going to be able to preserve scarcity if they start demanding actual tearing down of buildings. I mean, I wouldn't put that out of the realm of possibility for NIMBYs to say, oh, we should just tear down the houses and just instead of keep the housing prices up. But I don't think the politics are changing around this, especially as like a lot of people are becoming renters in much older ages. There's just a lot less sympathy for the NIMBY argument than there was in the past. Could you explain the impact of rising interest rates on corporate debt? Well, I mean, the risk is that a lot of corporate debt is usually like 3 to 7 years, so it's not immediate. People are still paying their lower interest rates on debt that they borrowed several years ago. But what it does do is that it reduces profitability in the long run because you have higher interest expenses than you would have had otherwise. So that's one impact. The other thing is a lot of these more zombie companies that were barely surviving on low rates are either going to have to sell themselves to a strategic buyer, divest assets, issue shares to pay off its debts, or some of them are going to go outright business. Like the era of the zombie company is going to die as a result of this. That's the other kind of the other kind of after effect, second order effect of this. And yeah, and I think you'll see corporate borrowing rates be lower in general because um, it's not going to be as profitable. You won't see, and you'll probably see less share buybacks because there's a lot of companies, particularly consumer staple companies, who were borrowing money to buy back shares. And when rates are as high as they are now, that's just not a profitable thing to do. It's the same thing of like institutional investors are no longer buying single family homes like the BlackRocks of the world. The reason why they're not doing it anymore is because with rates the level they are, you can get a similar or higher yield with a lot less work and a lot less hassle by simply buying a bond. Like the only reason they were doing that because rates were so low that they couldn't just buy bonds. And I just posted a link to my video about why I think a lot of the housing stuff is going to correct itself in the end. What causes a city to be less financially segregated? New York, where the same neighborhood can house multi-million-dollar homes and a government housing than a city like Miami or Los Angeles. Well, I mean, I don't know if New York is less, economically segregated. I mean, I think Manhattan is increasingly becoming financially segregated, especially with the advent of the congestion tax. With the advent of the congestion tax, I think it's becoming more economically segregated. And there's the reason why it hasn't completely been is because you have rent controls holding people into places that they probably shouldn't be in if a free market wouldn't be able to afford to stick around. And I think it's just density. Like the good and bad neighborhoods are just closer together because of population density. So that's kind of another take on why you would see it that way. So I think it is. It's just that things are just closer together in New York. Who would win, a knight or a samurai? Well, it depends if the knight gets a horse or not, is really the answer. Like the knight should win because knights are usually on horseback. But I don't really know enough about their fighting styles if it was just mano on mano, like on foot, to see who would win. So I can't really comment on that. How does building a dividend portfolio contribute to long-term wealth? Well, I mean, it's usually like there's usually companies that pay consistent dividends tend to be more consistently profitable. But if you want to know more about that, just reach out to me directly about specifics about dividend portfolios. But yeah, like next question. Is there a new huge permanent upper class forming right now? It's where, and what country? I generally don't think there is a permanent upper class forming. And there's several reasons why not. Because the very upper class tends to have higher birth rates and split things down. A lot of the new money don't really marry based off of like certain traits that are more likely to keep their descendants in certain classes as well. So I think that's I don't think that's the case. I don't think there's a permanent upper class coming. There's especially technology creating enough disruption to always bring a new generation of new money, and America being more of a sink or swim economy and allowing old industries and businesses to fail and compete. Yeah, there are places that don't allow that, like Europe has had a permanent upper class for centuries. So it's really just how your institutions, like if we become more European and put a lot more barriers to entry and limit entrepreneurship and make taxation more not more progressive because it's what higher for middle class people overall, and create this culture of not striving, then yeah, you will see a more permanent upper class. But I don't know, maybe I'm an optimist, but I just don't really see that happening in America. Let's see. Why pay a dividend instead of investing in M&A or R&D? Well, there's a few reasons. One, it's basically paying a dividend is saying the investor knows how to reinvest their money better than the company does. And if the company doesn't have a project that generates a higher yield than what the S&P would, you are burning cash by doing M&A or R&D. And a lot of M&A is not successful. Like if you look at the track record of M&A, it's a mixed bag. A lot of money and shareholder value is often destroyed via M&A. So that's why. Like it's depend like if you have projects that are internal of IRRs of 20+%, then yeah, you shouldn't be paying a dividend. You need to spend all your money on internal growth and R&D. But if the IRR of your R&D or M&A is lower than what like the S&P would, or if you're a smaller cap company, like the small cap index would be, you are burning shareholder wealth by not paying a dividend. So that's kind of the reasons why. Or some people think, and there's also buybacks, which is kind of a indirect way of paying back the shareholders. And that's because of the difference in taxation treatment to interest versus dividends. But that's a whole nother conversation. Permanent underclass. So do you think there's a chance of a permanent underclass? I mean, yeah, I mean, if you create the welfare state too generous and you don't create enough opportunities for advancement, that's how permanent underclasses develop. Well, yeah, or you just have technology. I think there's a technological risk too, that like if AI just makes it so that the minimum threshold to be able to sustain yourself through your own talent and effort is just too high, then you also have a risk of a permanent underclass. But that's a whole nother dilemma that I should probably do for a future video. I'm going to quickly have a sip of water and I'll wait for more questions. Should we worry that our investments made today won't be enough to sustain us by retirement? I'm 27 and I'm saving for my 401k and Roth. My goal is to retire with 1 to 1.5 million. Yeah, I mean, outliving your investments is a real concern. I mean, I don't really know about your situation because it depends how much you're saving and what your income needs will be in retirement. Do you plan on having a family or not? If you want more about your specific situation, just feel free to reach out to me directly via the consultation form. But that's one of the most common worries that anybody should have is outliving your investments, especially in an age of longer longevity. If you're in the top 10% of income earners, and you're going and the top 10% of people in terms of wealth, you're going to live till about 89 on average, and life expectancies are going up. So you're probably going to live into your 90s. And a lot of retirement plans aren't built for people to live to their late 90s or 100 or beyond. So yeah, you do need to factor that in. What are key financial planning considerations like prenups and estate planning when marrying into a high net worth family? Oh, there's a lot of things you need to consider. Well, one, are you in the high net worth family or are you marrying into the high net worth family? Because usually the person who has more concern is the high net worth person than the person who is marrying into the high net worth family. But yeah, you're probably going to be expected to sign a prenup, and that makes logical sense because just the way divorce laws are structured. You might have to worry about parental control and influence. Like, is it your spouse has the money independently, or is it the parents' money? If it's the latter, the parents or the grandparents' money, this is not really a financial consideration, but it's a control situation, and they might like leverage threatening to write you out of the will or not help the family with house or a wedding or whatever if you don't comply to certain things they want you to do. So the money could be used as a kind of like a golden like um a golden handcuff, in the sense it's a forced way to control you. And that's probably what you would have to worry about, I'd say, the most. And yeah, and the other thing too is your estate planning. You need to make sure that the parents have a good estate plan and that whoever you're marrying gets along well enough with their brothers and sisters so it doesn't turn into a giant litigious mess when the older generation passes. Um, so that's kind of my answer to that. But if you want to know more about your situation directly, just contact me via the consultation form. I can't go into specific situations on the live. Um, let's see. How do you know what you know? Why do you learn everything you know? Well, I learn things because I like to ask the question why. I like to ask the question where as well. That's why I like geography, because um, yeah, that's kind of my take on that. But in terms of why, like history is studying why things are the way they are. Economics is studying why do people make certain trade-offs the way they do. Finance explains why money flows the way it does and how to make sure that it helps you to save for retirement and build. So yeah, that's kind of just asking why and then diving down into it. It's a lot easier now with AI and Google searches, but before you just had to read books about it or talk to people who knew more than you. I don't know. I've always liked to learn, and I was kind of more of an introvert, so I spent a lot more time reading and educating myself on things than socializing, particularly in my teens and 20s. So that got me a really big head start, and I've made sure to put myself in circumstances where I would learn new things. Like I've traveled to a lot of different countries. I've worked at when I worked at companies. I tried to ask a lot of questions and learn about how things work at my employer at the time, and I went to conferences and do a lot of self-education type things in my life. I've always prioritized that. Um, yeah. Let's see. Next question. Let's see. Is it possible to earn $1 billion without starting or owning a business? Maybe if you get one of those AI developer contracts from Meta, that's possible. You or you're a professional athlete, or you have some extremely high paying salary job, and then you invest it well. Or if you take a really, or you invest in something that's like the very ground floor of like the next Amazon. Yeah. I mean, but in terms of like a realistic strategy, no. Like I'm gonna do a video about this probably this summer or early fall about I'm just gonna call it straight up how to get rich. Where I'm gonna talk about somebody who's from like a working class, middle class, or a professional class background, and they want to get to truly rich or counter elite status. What's the way to do it? Like, it's it's simple but not easy. That's my hint on it. But that's a whole. I recorded the video already. It's gonna be almost an hour long when it's all said and done. So I can't really go into all of it now, but yeah, I do have a more elaborate answer for that. So stay tuned. Um, let's see. Um, what is your opinion on quantum computing? I mean, I think it has the potential to be disruptive, but we haven't really seen any end uses yet. Um, like I think it has risk of breaking the blockchain. I don't know what the implication of that is for crypto, but that's another possible implication. Um, I think it's probably more like I don't think it's going to be as big of a revolution as the personal computer or the AI. I think it's a more marginal technology. Like it's going to improve a lot of things, but it's not to the same degree. It's probably more like the difference between like a cell phone and a landline than the difference between like um, basic software and AI. I think it's not as big of a jump. Um, but yeah, Steve Ballmer was one of the really early employees. And if you're if you're a Fortune 500 CEO and make it up to that level, yeah, you're kind of one of the exceptions. You're one of the 500 best managers in the world, but it's not normal. Even most Fortune 500 CEOs don't become billionaires. Um, yeah. Um, let's see. Thanks for the compliment on the map shirt. It just when I saw it at the store, it just kind of spoke to me. Um, yeah. Do you think Mark Shapiro is a bad CEO? And do you like the movie Moneyball? I mean, I like the book Moneyball. I thought the movie was okay because I already knew the story because I read the books. I never was a fan of the A's because, as an Angels fan, they were our main rival. at that time, so it was kind of frustrating to see Moneyball work in that way against us, but we ultimately won at the end because the Angels won the World Series that year when the Moneyball team was highlighting, not the A's. The A's flamed out early in the playoffs, so I guess there's that. Let's see. There's currently a hunt for Satoshi's wallet. It's like modern treasure hunting. But yeah, if you found those, unless if you own them already, wouldn't that be theft? You can't just go and take somebody's missing wallet or lost password. How does the government promote military service when the young people of the country seem to be struggling? I don't think we need to be promoting military service. Militaries aren't going to be winning wars based on raw manpower anymore. Like, what you reward is you pay the people who have the skills you need high enough that they would want to work in the military. Or if you really think there's a war with a just cause, you only get involved in wars that have a real just cause. Like, I don't think there's any way you're going to sell somebody in Vietnam War II. It's just, especially in the age of information, it's just not going to sell anymore. So, yeah. I think the example would be for militaries. You want to recruit like the best, like I always thought esports was a military recruitment scheme because before, like in the age of like autonomous weapons, like the people who would be the best drone pilots would coincidentally be the best gamers. So yeah, I mean, there probably are subtle ways, but you just want to get that talent, whether you pay them or you rebrand the conflict you're fighting as a just cause. And the chair force, I love that comment. Next one, yeah. How does Angels fan? How does the team with the two biggest stars the past 25 years have 3 playoff games to show for it? Yeah, they just never invested in pitching. That was the problem, and it's frustrating. Like, how can you have Ohtani and Trout and not make the playoffs once with both of them on the team? It's very frustrating. Yeah. Let's see. How does looks maxing play into becoming elite? It does not. I might do a video about economics of looks maxing for members. So if you want to watch that, become a member of the channel. But I'm not going to ever do like a topic like that on the general feed. When a corporation restructures and most of their debt gets wiped away by backers, is that a first good step solving companies' fundamentals? Well, that's just bankruptcy. So like you have to assess it now as a new company. Basically, you're just restarting. Like all the old investors, all the equity investors got wiped out. So yeah, I mean, I guess it solves the company's fundamentals because it's now a new company. It's a completely different set of fundamentals because you go through the bankruptcy process. Yeah, you remind me of Sergio Garcia. Have you ever heard that? I actually have heard that from people before, especially golfers. I'm not Spanish, but when people guess what my ethnicity is, that's usually the one that people think I am because of my appearance. So I remember I went to Spain and I was surprised how much the people looked like me. So yeah. Let's see. What's the next question? The no salary cap in the MLB is unhinged. I'm actually going to do a video about the economics of baseball probably coming up too, if you guys find that interesting, because I think it's a very interesting topic. And the sports actually more interesting me now is not really watching the games, but more just like the business models of a lot of them and how they have to adapt, especially as like a lot of people are starting to kind of fade out for various reasons, and it's gone from a growing industry to a mature industry and how they handle it. Let's see, but should I get into sales, engineering, or business? Well, I mean, business what is business? Do you mean by business? Business is sales, like, or finance. Those are the two, or accounting. Those are the three ways you get into business. I guess management. There's business. Business is either management, sales, finance, or accounting. So I don't really think that's a answer. I mean, it depends. If you want to make money the quickest, it's probably sales. If you want stability, it's probably the engineering management track. If you want something in between, probably the like finance. So yeah, it's also really what your personal interests line up with too. What are the worst and best price to quality of life in the most expensive cities in the U.S.? So are you saying like which of those cities are the best versus the worst, or like what neighborhoods or what suburbs? And what is HON in terms of cities? You mean like, cause I don't real, so just to be clear, I know New York, San Francisco, Boston, Honolulu. HNL is generally the abbreviation for Honolulu. I'm afraid I didn't include LA in that. Yeah, I would say the worst in terms of price to quality. Well, it depends on what you want to do for your life, but I mean, yeah, I don't really like the Northeast that much personally. I would say New York and Boston. I think I'd probably put Boston as the one in terms of, this is probably going to cause a lot of haters for my Bostonian right before I go on tour of those four cities. San Francisco, this is a tough one actually. And in LA, it depends where you live in LA. It's very different. Like actual city of Los Angeles is not very good, high quality, but you live in like Orange County or maybe some of the outer coastal suburbs, it's very nice. You get good money. You get a good quality of life for your money. But maybe I should do a tier list for in Honolulu, there's no jobs. Honolulu is great for tourism, but if you actually want to live there, unless if you're retired, it's going to be very difficult. So it's really a lot of it it comes down to personal preference in a way. Like I'm somebody's anti-cold weather, so I'd probably put Boston on the bottom in terms of quality of life. And then I'd probably put next would be New York, then Honolulu, San Francisco in that order. And I'm not really a fan of San Francisco saying this. It's just those are four cities I'm highly unlikely to live in. And if I was going to live in Hawaii, I would live in probably one of the more remote islands as a retirement. And this is, I'm assuming I'm a working professional and I need to have a job or a business where I have to live around other people. That's my key assumption here. Like if you live in the far remote exurbs of one of these places, I would probably change the order a little bit. Yeah, I mean, Atlanta, people have asked me about Atlanta. We don't have enough people yet on the votes, but if you want to come to Atlanta, put your vote in on the tour survey. I might add it to the 2026 list. Like so far for the 2026 tour, places that we're probably going to go to include Colorado, Australia, both Sydney and the Gold Coast in Australia, New York, Kansas City, Omaha, and San Diego and Houston are probably the stops for 2026 so far. We might add more, probably will add more, but like, yeah. And if you want Atlanta, people from Atlanta, the closest I'm probably going to come there this year is probably going to be DC. So yeah, let's see. But yeah, let me see. All right, I got a super chat. Thank you. Have you ever seen the classic 1970s movie 5 Easy Pieces with Jack Nicholson? It really does a phenomenal portrayal on class differences in it. No, I have not seen that movie. I haven't really honestly seen that many movies from the 70s. Like, I'm trying to think of one movie I really liked that was filmed in the 70s was Network. If you ever heard of that one, that's the Howard Beale movie.
I'm trying to think of other 70s movies that I guess The Godfathers. Those are 70s movies. I've seen those. And a lot of the Disney cartoons that came out in the 70s. I've seen those as a kid. But and then the original Star Wars, New Hope, 70s movie. So yeah, American Graffiti I think was also a 70s movie, but Jaws, the original Jaws. But yeah, I don't know. I generally haven't seen. I mean, I've seen even less 70s movies than probably 80s movies, to be quite honest. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that. I'm mad as hell to not take anymore. Yep, that's a classic movie line. Um, yeah. If you came up with a strategy, thank you for the like, for the super chat support, Christian. I don't see a question here, but I don't know if there was one. Do you use AI for day to day running your business? I use it a lot to help with certain things on the YouTube channel, like thumbnails and descriptions. Some people give me criticism for using AI thumbnails, but they generally actually get much higher click through rates than when I make them myself. So it's kind of like people don't say they don't like it, but they react to it positively. And I use it to supplement my research. So yeah, that's that's kind of my take on that. Oh, I don't know what question I stopped reading in the middle of it. I don't remember. I'm sorry about that if I did. Yeah. Why have boats, new and used, gotten so expensive? I mean, they've always been expensive. When have boats been cheap? Like, there's been an old joke that basically said the best days of a boat owner's life are the day he buys a boat and the day he sells it. Maintenance is expensive. So, yeah, like, I don't think boats were really ever like accessible to the working man, particularly yachts. So, I mean, unless you have like some really small rowboat or like a Sabot or something like that. What are the primary differences between old world and new world wines? I don't drink wine, so I'm not the one to ask that question. Do you own a lot of crypto? No, I do not. Let's see. Okay, if you can, here it is. If you came with a strategy that guarantees profit in the stock market, no matter what, and you want to sell it to a firm or fund or a one-time settlement, how much you ask for? I mean, if it was guaranteed, why would I ever sell it? Why wouldn't I just perpetually make my own money whenever I needed it? I can put whatever amount of money I need and just run it, and I'd eventually become the richest man in the world and buy everything and basically like become a one man ruling class. Like so unless if it guarantees a very small return, like let's say I can guarantee a safe 5% return no matter what happens, market up or down, then or maybe like if I guarantee like a 7% or 8% return no matter what. I mean, instead of me having to try to get leverage to finance that and all that, maybe I would sell it. But it still would have to be north of $1 billion. Like enough that like I could do whatever I want and money is not an object and I don't have to ever get back into trading. So yeah, I guess probably 10 billion would probably be what I would sell that for. But do you own physical gold and silver? I'm not going to comment on my holdings in gold and silver, but yeah, I do have some. I'm just not going to say the specific amount. Let's see. Are you from OC? Yes, I am from the OC. Are you politically libertarian? I would not consider myself to be libertarian, but I do have libertarian sympathies in a lot of different issues. Let's see. I'm looking for any of the questions that I missed. Do you listen to the podcast Nothing Personal with David Sampson? He was the president of the Miami Marlins for a long time and gives a real insight in the economics of baseball. No, but I probably would like it a lot. I used to listen to his interviews when he was on the Dan Le Batard show back in the day when he was still with the Marlins. I remember when I was at my first corporate job and I was really bored with what I did. So I basically and I needed podcasts that would take up most of the day to listen to in the background. So I listened to a lot of sports radio, particularly the Dan Le Batard show, because it was funny and they did bring on some good guests like what's his name? David Sampson. And so that's how I heard of him. And he seemed like a guy who tried to do his best, but he was really hamstrung by how cheap his bosses were. That's kind of the vibe I got from him. Is the purpose of a business to make money, or is it the purpose of a business to solve a problem? Well, it's kind of both. The purpose is to solve a problem so that you could generate excess value, which is translated into money. So that's the answer. Like, you could try to solve a problem without making money, more humanitarian one. That's a charity. But in general, solving a problem is usually financially lucrative because people are willing to pay you to solve their problems, because money is effectively an exchange of value. So, yeah, that's kind of my take on that question. Jim Rome's fellow gaucho. He went to UCSB as well. And yeah, he has some funny classics in his commentary. I don't know what he's been doing now. I generally have stopped listening to sports radio after 2010. So I am completely like out of it in terms of the sports radio scene. But Jim Rome, I liked the Tony Kornheiser show back in the day. Like, it was really funny when the whole Tiger Woods affair scandal blew up, and with all the jokes they were doing about that in the Tony Kornheiser show. And that's what's it called? And then Colin Cowherd back in the day, and there's a few others, but I generally don't really listen to sports talk radio anymore. I stopped listening to sports talk radio like years ago. Let's see. How would you start a business where you lack funding and some skills? I'm aware of what skills I lack, but the skills are varied and it isn't really achievable for me to know everything. Well, you need to first figure out what the problem is you're trying to solve and figure what existing skills you have to solve it. Like, until then, you again, I'm going to talk more about this in the how to get rich video I do in a few months. So I'm not going to get too deep into it here, but yeah, you can't do a business if you have no skills or no funding. You're going to have to get one or the other, preferably both. What's it called? Do you think AI will come up with a way to mathematically guarantee profits in trading? No, it's based on human behavior, and the market will become more efficient. And if one thing works too long, everybody will pile into it until the inefficiency is erased. So the answer is no. People have said the same thing about like automated trading or digital trading or being able to have computers do charts for you, or or the SEC making everything publicly disclosed. There's always a I don't think that an answer. Yeah. But yeah, I should check out that David Sampson podcast if I ever wanted to learn more. If I wanted to learn more about the economics of baseball. Do you think now with Miller being nominated to the Fed, and if Bissent follows in May next year, they will have a lot looser monetary policy? Well, Bissent's not going to the Fed. Like he's already said, he prefers being in the Treasury, and he's doing a good job there. And is probably the most credible member of Trump's cabinet. It would be very bad for the administration for Bissent to. So I don't really see that happen. What's the best government pension jobs? I don't know. I mean, best assuming like where you do the least amount of work and get the biggest retirement. It's probably in the state of California, as long as California remains solvent. But I don't really search for that because I don't really strive for that. And I don't really think that young, ambitious people should be striving to get a fat pension from the government. Like I saw these things years ago, like the valedictorians of places like Athens and Madrid and Milan, and are asked like, what do you want to do for your career? And they say, I want to be a government bureaucrat. And I'm like, the fact that your valedictorians are striving to be government bureaucrats is part of what's wrong with your society. So, yeah. Let's see. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Well, a few things. One, I plan on continuing to kind of just do what I'm doing right now. I want this channel to probably be, I don't know, 1 million subscribers or bigger. I'll do the tour occasionally, but hopefully in 5 years, I won't have as much time to do the tour because I'll be having a young family of my own by then. But I will when I have a chance. I want to continue growing my business. I'd like to increase the AUM above $1 billion under management, ideally. And yeah, just kind of live a good life here while growing the things that I'm doing now, and maybe branching out into other intellectual realms outside of finance and economics for some of my commentary eventually, and just trying to get my ideas out there in a more tangible way than just talking about it on YouTube. Let's see. What do you think of the idea that the wealthier class, the more adults treat their kids like autonomous individuals? I don't really think that's true. I think that's more just like cultural things or only child dynamics. Like there's plenty of rich families who are helicopter parents, and there are plenty of lower class families who treat their kids like autonomous individuals because they don't have time to be parents. Like the whole latchkey parent thing of the Gen Xers probably are familiar with. So yeah, I don't really think there's any merit to that. Let's see. Would you rather be Warren Buffett or Jim Simons? Well, I think I'd rather be Buffett because Buffett had a longer life, and Buffett wasn't simply just a quant. I don't know. I think I would pick Buffett of those two. It's probably he's closer to my investment style than Simons. Let's see. Do you believe that entry of women in the labor market has a positive, negative, neutral effect on salaries and the cost of living? I hear this a lot, but not a lot of justification for it. I mean, it increases inherently. I think it's inherently increases labor supply. So it just depends. Has there been enough? If the number of jobs demanded increased faster than the increase in labor supply from entering women into the workforce? That's what your opinion on that really determines on whether it's been a positive or a negative for society. What job would you tell your kid to do? And I think the double income thing, it has driven up housing prices to a certain degree, but that's also a supply issue because of boomers and NIMBY and all that, which probably would have happened either way. Like the whole idea in the 50s of some guy being able to completely support a family on a mediocre job was a product of a world that was destroyed by World War II and the US being the last man standing. And it also had to do with the fact that the living standards in the 1950s weren't quite as high as people perceived them to be. But I'm probably going to do a video in the economic boom series about the 50s. If you think I'd be interesting, what should I do? And also, what would be more interesting if I did a boom video about the 1920s or the 1950s? Because those are the two I'm deciding between if I bring back that series. If you would ever do a Substack or YouTube, I'd definitely tune in to give some thought. Oh, that's for what's your story behind the Montreal Expos hat on the bookshelf? Yeah, I did do a whole series about the bookshelf in one of my older live streams. And as I update the bookshelf, I will do a new one. Like the Space Needle you see to my right is actually I bought as a souvenir from the fan tour in Seattle. And I think I'm going to start buying little mementos from all my stops on the tour, because I used to buy gifts for like friends and family every time I go to a city, but I figured, why don't I add some memories for the channel as well? So you'll probably see some turnover of little things from stops on the tour. Like this wine bottle here is from my first meetup. It's a picture of my colleague Murphy and I speaking at the Laguna Beach meetup. So I think I'll probably have some of those added to the shelf. But the Expos hat, I mean, I don't know. The Angels have always been my favorite team, but I kind of wanted another hat, and I just liked how it looked. And so I just bought one day. It was right before I was going to Montreal for a vacation. I was like, okay, cool. I'll buy an Expos hat. And then when I was living in Singapore, actually some guy walked up to me, a French Canadian businessman, and it's like, I was wearing the hat, and he's like, "Hey, I see you're wearing that hat, the Montreal Expos. Are you from Quebec?" And I'm like, "No, I just thought it was a cool hat." And he's like, "Well, you made my day. Thanks for wearing that hat." And I'm like, "You're welcome." And I've gotten a lot of comments on the channel about the hat. So maybe I have a big French Canadian audience, or do people like the Expos? But I don't know. I just think it's kind of sad they lost their team. It's kind of cool to have like a cosmopolitan, non-English speaking city have a team, and it just had this interesting international flair that the Blue Jays just don't have to the same degree. Yeah, the next question I have asked is, have you ever done consulting or thoughts on lower risk businesses like laundromats, small hotels, etc.? Or any thoughts on that business genre? I do consulting generally for like the topics I talk about on this channel, whether it's business, finance, economics, etc. And you could fill out a consultation form or schedule a call with me on Calendly if anybody wants that kind of thing. But in terms of those kind of, it depends on the individual business, but I think it's not as easy as perceived. Like there's this whole idea on the internet that you can just buy these things up, and like a bunch of them in a metro area, and roll them up just through like and just gain efficiency just through like automation and other stuff like that. I don't think that's as easy as perceived. There's a reason why a lot of those businesses don't scale as due to high capital costs or high labor costs, or just like a lot of them are based on personal reputation of the ownership of why people go there. And so I just don't think it's as straightforward of an opportunity as people perceive. Yeah. Let's see. Would you ever join a country club? I mean, from a financial perspective, it's a bad decision to join a country club, even if you enjoy golf, because there's usually huge buy-ins. Like the ones where I live, they're mid six-figure buy-ins to join a country club, to join one of the major golf clubs in my area. And yeah, so it's like, and if I was going to spend that kind of money on golf, I can play at the nicest public courses all over the world every week for the rest of my life. And assuming I invested that money instead of bought the country club membership, I would come way far ahead. So it's just, that's what hesitates me. Like ideally a golf club would be awesome. Like to be, and there's a lot of social benefits to it too, but the cost doesn't justify it. If you mean like a country club that's not tied to golf, like something like the Balboa Bay Club or the Huntington Club here in Orange County, where it's like tennis and a pool and like a beach and community events and like, yeah, all that kind of stuff. Or like these more social type clubs like the Pacific Club or its equivalents other places. Yeah, I probably would join one of those because you get a lot of the social perks of a golf club without the enormous cost of being a member of a golf club. And they're fun. Like my family was members of country clubs, like the non-golf versions when I was a kid. And some of my best childhood memories were those. And if you have kids, it's a great place to take your kids for the weekend. They can hang out in the pool. They can meet other kids of similar ages who they can be friends with, and or be involved with local sports. Like I think like the non-golf country clubs are generally a good investment if you are a young family and have the money to do it. If the golf clubs are just way too overpriced to justify, though. So that's kind of the difficulty there. I mean, I guess this is a very first world problem to have, but yeah, I think I would join one of those like those style clubs once I have children of my own for sure. If you had a son that Michael Jordan level talent, would you rather he go into the NBA or start a hedge fund and grind it out, assuming he had 39 million in capital already? It depends. Does he like playing basketball? Like if that's the question. I mean, if he wants to play basketball, I'd say go for basketball first. But what I would do, especially with NIL, is I would leverage the basketball talent to get a scholarship at Stanford. Like Stanford is kind of in the power leagues, but it offers the world's best education. I mean, it's either at the number one or tied with like Harvard in the top Ivy Leagues. And that admission to Stanford is worth more than a lot of the lower level rookie contracts in professional basketball. Like Stanford dropouts get funding for venture capital just for the fact that they were able to get into Stanford. So, yeah, I mean, and if you're Michael Jordan, I mean, talent, I guess you leave after 1 year to go to the NBA. But if you're like a slightly less talent, like a equivalent, like a post outside the lottery first round pick, like 15 to 30, I'd play all 4 years at Stanford, get my degree, buy an insurance policy in case if I get hurt on my draft status, and then play in the NBA for a few years until my career is over, no matter how good it is. And then after that, then I pursue finance or whatever I'd want to do next. That would be my advice. But like, it's not just about the money, but the opportunity to compete at athletics at the highest level like that, particularly the Olympics, is worth more than what you can buy at, honestly. Like, I would love to like have been able to be an Olympic level athlete in something, because that's just like the highest level of competition. And there's also the nationalism stake at it. So yeah, that's if I had 20K in cash right now, what should I invest in? Simple, and don't say index funds or ETFs. Well, I mean, 20K is not really enough to do something that's more sophisticated than that. I'm not going to be giving stock recommendations on here. If anything, if you have like human capital improvements that you can invest in, or like working capital towards a startup, that's probably the best ROI. But yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of I invest in yourself. That's probably the answer. How can men and women reject red pill negativity and return to a symbiotic relationship? That's a good question. I mean, watch my video about class and dating for more on that. You have to just pick people not only because of superficial things. Like you have to find a shared purpose to be together. And I think there needs to be some sort of religious element to it as well. Like without a spiritual component, it's hard to hold together a marriage when times get tough. And it's pure, like, so, and you can't rely on just pure limerence feelings. to sustain something for 25 to 50 years either. So, yeah, I think it's just a combination of, let's see. Yeah, I think looks maxing is different than taking pride in personal appearance. Like, if it was that simple, nobody would have an issue with looks maxing. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I think with dating, you have to have a minimum amount of income that you can like support yourself and not be a liability. But beyond that, depending on your age, um, you probably want to keep, like, if you're a wealthy person, you want to keep that as a low profile on the dating market, unless if you are trying to um, play a control game. But I did a video about this. Are you a Christian? What denomination? Yeah, I'm Roman Catholic and I'm a practicing Catholic. So yeah, I've said that in several videos. I've done a video even about Catholic economics. And I'm going to be doing one about the finances of the Catholic Church coming up. What do you think about Trump's executive order allowing property investment and other non-traditional investments to be held in a retirement fund? I mean, why not? I mean, people should be able to put whatever they want. They're investing their retirement money, whatever they want. It's their money. As long as they keep it in the deferred account and don't like deal with like the tax complications of that. But yeah, I think it's a good idea. Let's see. Do you consider Donald Trump old money or new? I think he is new money. I think either his kids or his grandkids are the first Trumps to be old money. I'm not sure if Trump's grandfather had money or not. Was like it, because that really is kind of the linchpin. Like, basically, you can't have a living ancestor who made the money to be old money. So yeah, it's probably his grandchildren are the first old money in the Trumps, or maybe Barron because he's so young. What's it called? Do Catholics follow what the Pope says? Well, I mean, the papal infallibility is kind of a misleading kind of thing. It's not true that whatever the Pope says is automatically doctrine. Otherwise, Pope Francis would have torched the church by now when he was in charge. But it's more in the sense that if they say something that is specifically related to doctrine, put in a formal statement that this is because of X, Y, and Z, then yeah, that it technically is. But that's usually limited to very niche circumstances. So yeah, I mean, I feel like the Pope is like the equivalent of the president of the Catholic Church. Like, I feel like being a Catholic is like being like an American. It's like, I'm not, just because I don't like the leadership doesn't mean I abandon the faith if I believe that the fundamental theology of Catholicism is true. Like, there are certain popes I did not like, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to be a Catholic. Well, a lot of atheists care more about the Pope because they want a Pope that will help delegitimize, like, kind of make the Catholic Church less Catholic, for a lack of a better term. Like, they want a progressive Pope because that hopes that it will bring a progressive ideology into Catholicism, or just destabilize it in unintentionally consequence of that. And they think that the Pope can just convert an entire billion Catholics into supporting their ideology. So that's why a lot of political ideologues, it used to just be progressives who thought that way, but now there's some conservatives who want a right-wing Pope for similar reasons. They think that the Pope can basically convert everybody's ideology because of a few statements. And that's not really how it works. It's like, just because Trump or Biden became president doesn't mean everybody all of a sudden has their views in America. It's very similar in that way. Would you rather be Pope or president of a country? Well, I mean, I don't want to live a life of poverty and celibacy. So that's why I don't want to be a Pope. Like, if I lived in medieval times, back when the popes actually had political power and were able to have families, like, maybe I would have been a Pope in medieval times. But in the modern time, I'd probably rather be a president of a country. But Yeah, I mean, so like I don't really know which country. That'd be a good question. I think being president of the United States would be very stressful. I think the president of Switzerland probably has a pretty good um, job. The fact that nobody really knows who he is means that they're probably doing a good job. But I don't think I want to get into presidential politics personally. Yeah, I mean, the Pope is still political, but he's more about just trying to be a peacekeeper and advance like spiritual goals more than hard power goals. Do you invest in real estate? I mean, not currently, but I eventually plan on doing so when it makes sense. I mean, the Pope himself might not be impoverished by the time he gets to popes, but you had to live your life as an impoverished priest to get to being a pope. So that's kind of where that comes from. And I don't think the popes live lavish lifestyles then, and they're not supposed to. They're the father of the church. They're supposed to lead by example. And let's see, from a short-term post-grad view, what skills and fields are they targeting to secure well-paid work in the first 2 years to hedge against underemployment? It depends. I mean, a lot of affluent parents just want to have their kids to do whatever seeks them happy, to be quite honest. They're not as fussy about it. Um, if it's it's more of an upper middle class that put pressure on their parents, on their kids than the elites do. I mean, I think if they do, it's politics. I think historically is what they want them to do if they are that kind of pressure. Um, yeah, so I don't really know the answer to that question. I don't really talk to a lot of old money parents advising their kids on what to do. Yeah, you're welcome for the referral, Old Money Luxury. I think he does a great job with all the biographies. We and we did. I think that we did a good collaboration with the story of Luigi. And yeah, if you want to learn more about the lives of the biographical stories and the lives of these old money elites and like their family history and their story and how they got there, I strongly recommend the Old Money Luxury YouTube channel. And I did a recent collaboration with him, which I recommend you guys all check out as well. Let's see. Um, what's it called? Are you for or against the citizenship-based taxation? I'm generally against it. I think you should be taxed based on the country you live in, because like that's the ones who government services benefit you the most. Maybe if you own a business that's income is primarily generated domestically, you maybe should have to pay on your revenues donated domestically in that country, because the governance of that country is partially why the company might be successful. But on worldwide income, if you don't earn it in that country, it doesn't make sense. And yes, I have been to the Vatican. It's really nice. And speaking of the Vatican, I will be back in the Vatican in September for Catholic Jubilee, and I'm going to be having a meetup nearby in Rome. And if you are Italian watching this, or somebody going on vacation to Italy in September, I'd love to see you there. Let's see. Catholics in the USA have been more historically working class relative to Protestants. Yeah, pre-JFK, I would say that was the case. I don't think that's the case anymore. Let's see. Do you think we'll ever see 2 to 3% mortgages in our lifetimes? No, I heavily doubt that. Let's see. Do Catholics have the same in-group benefits as other religious groups? No, because there's too many of us. When you have 1/6 of the population in your religion, it's hard. I mean, like there's niches of like practicing Catholics who like to help each other out, but it's not the same degree. There's also like nepotism is more common within families, and that's another problem with Italy's economy, is that they just will hire their friend or relative who's underqualified over somebody who's more qualified. Yeah. Let's see. Thoughts on the demography of Wilshire Corridor near Westwood? I mean, it's UCLA, isn't it? Like, I don't really have much to say about that. Have you seen the movie Hannibal? No, I have not seen the movie Hannibal. So, yeah, I mean, I know about it. It's the sequel of Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal Lecter and all that, but no, I have not seen it. I don't really like horror movies personally. They're not my cup of tea. So I don't think I'll ever will watch it. Would you buy a mountain house or a beach house first? Unless if I leave the United States, it would definitely be a beach house. Like that's basically saying, well, am I going to live in Switzerland or America? If I'm asking that question, like I'd buy the beach house first, but I don't think I'd want to live right on the beach. I mean, I would ideally, but just because I'm kind of financially practical, I'd probably live like I don't know, like a few blocks in, or make it a mile in to save some money on my house, but still have the nice coastal weather and live in the nice city and have a little more space. Problem is if you live right on the beach, like where I live, you gotta live like in a duplex or something rather small without really like a backyard, or like have to deal with a lot of traffic getting in and out. Unless if there's a few like on Ocean Ave where you can buy like these giant mansions that are mid 8 figures, but I don't think that's going to be a house that I will likely buy in the next 30 years, but you never know. So I think if I had to choose the two, it would be beach house. I like the beach better than the mountains. Do you think the Amish will have a cultural change and start voting regularly? If so, what their voting interests in the voting block? I honestly have no idea. I mean, did they vote in the last election? I haven't really been following that. Do you talk about reading a lot? I'm guessing mostly nonfictions. Any fiction favorites? Yeah, I read 99% nonfiction. I haven't read a novel since probably college, to be quite honest. It's been a long time. Yeah, so I mean, in terms of fiction, I'd have to think about it honestly. Which books were probably my favorite in the fiction category? Would you live in Miami, or do you think it's worth it for taxes or not? I mean, I did the math on this recently because I've considered moving out of where I do because of the taxes. And I mean, I kind of just accept the taxes as just like a quality of life expense at this point. Um, Even though I would ideally like a much lower tax environment, but due to just increased housing costs in Miami, increased homeowners insurance in Miami, bad traffic really in greater Miami. Um, and you have the private schools often are more expensive in Miami because they're more in demand because the school system isn't that great there. Like the difference in terms of my take home income after everything is not as big as you would think it would be. Um, like if you're making like in the 6 figure range, like maybe if I'm starting to make like, I don't know, 5 million plus a year, the math gets a little bit different. But like if you're making mid 6 figures, like, or high 6 figures, even, like it's not enough for me to want to leave the tax savings California personally. Like if I was to leave California, I'd likely move international. Um, well, other financial YouTubers that you watch. I like Patrick Boyle. I think he does a really good job for finance YouTube. There's other YouTubers who I just don't know the names off the top of my head. And I think that's what I should do for my next live stream. I might do it in a couple weeks. It's just all my other recommended content, whether it's podcasts, YouTubes, books, etc. Like if you would want me to see a video where I just did recs for other content creators and it's a live stream, would you watch that? Like I don't know if the audience would find that interesting enough that I just give shout outs to other creators, whether it's podcasts, whether it's old media, whether it's blogs, whether it's books, whether it's other YouTubers. So yeah, like if you think that's interesting, leave a comment because I'm considering doing that for the next live stream. Let's see. Have we seen the end of retail stores, and will we have downtown financial centers in 10 years? No, we've not. I mean, I think we bottomed out on retail centers. There's just certain things that just don't make sense to buy online. And I think we've hit the new equilibrium. Let's see. A best old money coastal town in the South: Savannah, Mobile, New Orleans, Charleston, or Sea Island. I mean, I've only been to 3 of those: Savannah, New Orleans, and Charleston. And if I had to pick, it'd be Charleston. I really like that area, particularly the south of Broad. I think New Orleans is kind of just too much in decay. I have to worry about crime. And Savannah, I don't know. It's next to Hilton Head, which is nice, but I just personally like Charleston better. It's a little more classier vibe and is a bigger city with more going on. And the other 2 I haven't been to. So, yeah, that's my take on that. Let's see. Have you ever lived in the mountain region of Virginia? Oh, no, he's asking somebody else. No, I've not. I've never lived in the Southeast US. It's the place in the country I've spent the least amount of time, whether as a tourist or a resident, by far. Do you think LA has a poor prognosis going forward relative to other major cities? I mean, if I had to look at LA today, it's probably Chicago in the 70s or the 80s. It will still be an important city. It'll probably be the best performing city in the West Coast. But if the whole region is struggling, it's going to be sunk down with it. But I think the LA will probably be the best city still in the Midwest. Not in the Midwest, I mean in the West Coast, in terms of it, because it's more economically diversified than the rest of the West Coast, which is more dependent on technology and software. Let's see. Do you like Manhattan Beach? Yeah, it's nice. I've only been there a couple times. It's a little bit. I don't like the lack of parking there, which is it makes it a little bit stressful, which is why I don't go there that much. I prefer Orange County, but yeah, it's a nice place. Let's see. All right. I'm going to wrap this up in 10 minutes. So ask your questions now. Because I got some work I got to finish up before going to sleep tonight, I'd like to get that done when I'm not too tired. So this is kind of like the 10-minute warning for the live stream. And again, I'm not going to answer questions about specific stocks or specific investments. That's just due to the nature of my business. Thoughts on Bernie Madoff? Well, he was a scammer. Yeah, he got what he did was awful, and he got what he deserved in the end. It's too bad a lot of the investors lost what they lost. What is the percentage female viewers on this channel? It's about 13 to 15%. So it's sizable, especially for a finance channel, but it's still overwhelmingly a male audience on this channel. Do you keep up with pop culture or popular shows or video games or sports? Help with your customers. Oh, that's what my father's business strategy was. He would follow everything on. He loves sports, so it was easy for him to follow up on sports. And every male customer or prospect he talked to, he just went straight to talking about their local sports team or whatever their favorite sport is in general. And he'd build a lot of rapport that way. And he used to read a lot of gossip magazines like Us Weekly. And I was like, Dad, why do you read this stuff? It's nonsense and it's really boring. It's and he's like, Nick, this is how I read it so that I can relate to women who are like buyers and prospects for my business. And it worked for him. So he builds like a good sense of rapport that way with prospects. And so I personally wouldn't do that. I mean, I know enough about sports because I had a sports fan phase from the age of 14 to 25-ish. And that accumulated knowledge, along with seeing sports headlines, a couple times a week means I'm pretty caught up with sports, and I still follow a lot of the business side of it because I find it interesting. But outside of, I'm not as close of a sports fan as I used to, and I never really was into pop culture. I mean, I used to go to movies a lot in my younger years because that's something you kind of did with your friends and family, and you watch it at home with your friends and family. But I don't even watch movies on the airplanes anymore. I'm usually just playing on my Switch. Like, it's just not something. There haven't really been very good movies since 2010, or maybe even at like 2015 at the latest. And so I just haven't been bothered really. So yeah, that's kind of my take on pop culture. I don't really follow it personally, but I mean, I could see how it could be valuable for business, but I'd rather just figure out connections that I authentically have with people, and I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I don't think everybody would want to be a client of mine, and the people who aren't a good fit, they'll find an advisor who is a good fit for them. So yeah, what is my Myers-Briggs personality type? It's an INTJ. So yeah. I have read parts of Moby Dick. I have read Jane Austen. I really dislike it. Pride and Prejudice was one of my least favorite books I've ever read. It's like a romantic comedy in a book. I don't really like romantic comedies generally. So, and particularly slow ones like Pride and Prejudice. So it's not my cup of tea. I don't think California would fall apart without migrant labor. I think that's a false assumption. That's my answer. I think they'll adapt and they'll use more automation, just like what happened to the South after the abolishment of slavery. Let's see. Any general advice for those of us who love to travel? Advice on saving up for future trips, your favorite destinations? Yeah, I love talking about travel. The last live stream was about travel. So, yeah. And I think that a few advice. One, when you're young and before you're married, go and travel. It's worthwhile, and go to places that I would like. Go to places that are the first place should be someplace that's not the same culture as you, but adjacent. Like if I'm American, and I've never traveled, I want to go to Britain as my first place. That's too similar to America. I'd go to like Italy or Spain or something like or something, or Argentina. It's like enough. It's close enough that like you won't feel complete culture shock, but it's different enough to be fun and interesting. I would try to travel with friends. Like it makes it more memorable and a good experience. Traveling alone is also a lot less cost efficient, and it's kind of lonely. If you have friends who live overseas or in other countries or family members, that's a way you could save on travel because you have friends or family to stay with. The other thing too is just look at like there's always you want to avoid generally the places that are the most Instagrammable for lack of a better term, because those are the ones that get crowded the most by tourists and tend to have the highest markups during peak season. And there's a lot of cool places that are very interesting that aren't really Instagram worthy. So like Uruguay is a good example of that. And yeah, there's certain places that are safer than others, and you don't want to go to places that are too dangerous by yourself or just with friends. Like you have to check that too. But yeah, and you can't do everything. Like you got to figure out what you want particularly. You have to figure out what your goal of the trip is. Do that, and then spend the rest of the time relaxing. Like there's really no point of like just going to some place and just spending the whole time doing sightseeing. Like you gotta have a bigger purpose, especially if you're a more veteran traveler like me. Like I don't really go to places now just to sightsee or take pictures. I gotta have a real reason something I can't do at home. And you should try to find some place that's like a climate wise or geography wise, like in terms like forest versus desert or beach versus mountains or whatever. That's like the opposite of your homeland or your home city, because that provides kind of a unique experience too. But yeah, I mean, and then also I wouldn't stay in like, if you're over the age of 25, I wouldn't stay in a hostel or really anything lower than like a 3-star hotel, just for comfort and safety reasons. Um, and like, that's another thing. Like, but yeah, those are some basic tips, but I got to go to other questions. Would I ever attend Burning Man? Absolutely not. I'm not a Burning Man guy at all. And anybody who would know me would say that. What's it called? Would you rather be Bill Gates or Tom Brady, all things considered, including age? Well, I'd rather be Tom Brady. I'm rich enough and I'm 20 something years, I'm 20 plus years younger. Even if you flipped the jobs, like it's not about being a quarterback or anything. It's just simply the age. They're both wealthy enough. Let's see. Will the meek inherit the earth? Well, I mean, they already have. Like, and they'll keep doing so because there's social mobility in the world. What are your thoughts on Peter Lynch and his decision to retire early? And if he's still active, what do you think his net worth would be? Well, how do you know he's not actively still trading his own money? That's a big question. Maybe he just wanted to be out of the spotlight. I mean, good for him. I would retire early if I had the wealth he had and I could still do my job. Like, he could still invest. Like, it's his own money. He has enough money that he can basically self finances, run his own family office, and just not have to deal with clients. He's a smart guy. You speak any other languages than English? Un poquito español, but I am not very good with languages. So that was always my worst subject at school. Do you think Trumpian rhetoric will have impact on upper class mannerisms? Seems like there's a regression of civility in politics, not even being political, just wondering. Well, I mean, pearl drift is a general issue that would happen whether Trump is or not. It's just downward social mobility. Like, the fact that downward social mobility is stronger than upward social mobility is causing all this stuff. Trump is just kind of the avatar of an existing trend. Let's see. Any advice on somebody trying to break into quant finance? Not really. I never went that path. Would you say you're a fan of Curtis Yarvin's just the Dark Enlightenment movement? I picked up on a bit on some of your videos. I think they have a lot of interesting ideas. I've read a lot of Dark Enlightenment content over the years or intellectual dark web stuff. I don't agree with all of it, but there are some kernels of truth in it. And like, there's a lot of ideologies that way. And that's the thing I've learned kind of as I've grown older, is that you don't have to be a loyalist to completely every single ideology. Leave the blind devotion to religion. Like, politics, you just pick and choose the policies or the ideas from each thinker that you think are best in line with your beliefs and you think will advance the world. Yeah. So, I mean, I think then the right particularly has a lot more political diversity in terms of ideas, because the left is generally all agrees on the same thing. They want equality above everything else. And it's really just different flavors of the same mission. Whereas with the right, there's a lot of different conflicting things. I'm a really big believer of the concept called the political triangle. I don't know if if people are familiar with the political triangle, but it's the idea that we don't really have like a left-right axis, but it's more of like a triangle where you have the three tenets of the French Revolution: liberty, fraternity, and equality, which are basically individualism, communism, and absolutionism are the 3 points of the triangle. And the right is the bigger end of the triangle, and the left is the left or point all towards the equality side. And a lot of the debates on the right are people whether they prioritize liberty more, which are more libertarians, or fraternity more, which are nationalists, or like authoritarian right. So yeah. Have you ever read David Graeber? Yes, I have. What's it called? I have read David Graeber. I read BS Jobs. I've talked about him on several of my videos on this channel. I actually did a full analysis on David Graeber like 3 or 4 years ago, where I broke down his work, and here's a link to it if you want to watch it. So there's my thoughts on Graeber. Yeah, do you think crypto is here to stay, or do you think crypto is going to creep into S&P 500? Why would crypto be in the S&P 500? It's not a stock. I think we'll see. If crypto can survive a prolonged recession, I'll change my mind. But it hasn't proven it yet. We haven't seen it, how it reacts to an extended down cycle when there's consistently more sellers than buyers. I would like to, that's what I'm waiting on to see if it has long-term staying power or not. So that's my take on that. Let's see. Yeah, the level of poverty overseas is a culture shock in many places. In fact, going to a very disadvantaged country was actually what revived my faith in Roman Catholicism, and thankful for like what I do have as an American, was seeing kind of how different societies handle how they treat the most disadvantaged in their society is what really influenced my development of my religious faith. Let's see. Yes, I am Catholic, as it's probably well known. It's now. What's it called? Would American elites learn French to differentiate themselves? No, because French is not really high status as it used to be. I mean, it's international elites are learning English to differentiate themselves. That's how it's been post World War II. It's why also partially why I've been a little bit less motivated to learn other languages, because basically everybody middle class or above who wants to deal with the world internationally is trying to learn English or already knows English. So I don't think there's going to be like a different elite language really anymore. I think we're past those days. What are quick thoughts on IQ and how prominent it correlates to one's intelligence? I mean, it does correlate to measure. It's a proxy for intelligence to a certain degree. It's just how accurate of one it is. And whether the bigger question at IQ is not that it exists or not. It is a correlation. It's just whether it can be improved or not. Is it something that's innate by birth, or is it something that can be improved over time, or it can be improved through a quality education? That's a real debate when it comes to IQ. And based on what I've researched on it, it can actually be improved with a better quality education. But I haven't done enough research on it to say too much. How much wealth should someone have before it makes sense to buy a new car? It depends on what kind of car you're buying, to be quite honest. And if you're whether you're self-employed or an employee, because there's different implications on that too. It's not really a straight answer. Let's see. Have you ever watched the Stillman movie Metropolitan? No, I have not. Again, I'm not really much of a movie guy. You think in 10 years, would you wake up from see Bitcoin at 12 million or more? No, I think that's highly unlikely, but I could be wrong. Let's see. Again, I don't know the magnitude of how much IQ can be improved either. So, yeah. I disagree that it's American English is the most desired. A lot of people I know want to learn British English because they think that's more classy. And it's nobody really wants to, if they did American English, it's a specific regions of American English too, that people want to learn. I don't think anybody wants my Californian accent, for example. So yeah, I don't think that makes me sound particularly intelligent. I don't think it makes me, you think we're entering into a more authoritarian state worldwide? Yeah, I think that's a real risk. I mean, it will be a risk until we see like the economic fundamentals of society improve. So, yeah, Yeah, my California accent's not going away. I've lived here too long. But there are some differences. Just look up California English if you're curious, because like the standard American accent is the equivalent of like Omaha, Nebraska. So that's like the standard American English, and there's a lot of deviations from that point. California English is a lot closer to that than say like the Deep South or Boston or Philadelphia or Chicago. But yeah, your thoughts on what's it called? Your thoughts on different class between different class and what it should be. I'm wondering marriage between different classes. Okay. I mean, I talked about that in my class and dating series, which I did in February, where I went into that. I generally think if you want a happy marriage, it's difficult to keep it if you're more two classes or more apart from your spouse. So, but if you want my full thoughts on that, you should watch my video, which my Valentine's Day special. I try to avoid the dating topics too much because I don't want to be a manosphere channel. I'm an economist. I am working finance. I'm not like some Casanova who's an expert in dating. I'm probably closer to the opposite. So I don't want to be giving people I don't want that to be the bulk of my content. And so like, but I do make one video a year, and I had two this year because I split it into two parts because it was so long, where I will have these topics, and I call it the Valentine's Day special. Nick, you say that as an American. If you are from third country speaking British English has nothing to do around the world. Typically, American accent gets you treated differently. Well, I mean, I don't know. Based on my experiences with people in Europe and East Asia, they seem to prefer to have the British accent. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's my circles. Let's see. How much will wearing orange telling people? All right. I don't really know how to answer that question. Is it cheaper to keep her? It depends on the context. Like, I'm against divorce for moral reasons, but that's my view on that. Does money attach itself to the intelligentsia? No, it does not, because if it did, all the college professors would be the wealthiest people on earth. Like, it's like a minimum IQ you need to move into the wealthy, but above that, it can often be a hindrance. So that's kind of my take on that. Do you think the average person outside the US has the concept or the idea of American richness in their head rent free? Yeah, I think they do. Well, America, though, is a wealthier country. If you look at the numbers, the cost of living is considerably higher. So the spread for somebody who's living paycheck to paycheck may not be as big as perceived. But if you're an American who has good savings habits, you are going to get ahead a lot faster than somebody from another country. Do you know any Latin? No, I do not. Let's see. It seems like in this day, earning a lot of money correlates to skillful manipulation. Could you argue against this? Depends what you mean by skillful manipulation. Like, if you mean like doing unethical things, no, there's always been people who've tried to make money in shady ways, but they get eventually caught and it comes back at them and they either lose it or face the consequences. Like, usually if you want sustainable wealth, you have to make a better product in the long run. It's just how long is the long run? And in the world of like instant communication and Yelp and the internet, it's very hard to perpetuate like a business based on deception. Do you still have family back in Greece? I'm not Greek. I have no family in Greece. I've never had family in Greece. I don't watch Seinfeld, so I can't really answer that question. Telling people what they want to hear, scanning high. Yeah, again, you can't sustainably build a business on deception. You might be able to pull off a few sales here and there, or even build up some initial momentum, but it always comes back to get you. Do you think it's possible to have a high GB country with low emission, or do you think the controlling groups are perceived low emission to slow down? Well, I mean, the low emission thing is a degrowth agenda fundamentally. It's like the thing is that you can reduce emissions. Like natural gas is lower emissions than burning oil. You could have a nuclear power for generate your electricity and lower emissions. So it's not entirely possible. But yeah, I mean, the thing is that your goal should be to basically, you want to have growth, but you don't want to, and you want to try to be efficient, but I don't think like climate change is enough of a reason to intentionally slow down your economy. How do different families keep their generational wealth? What does it mean for the economy when a group of class keeps getting resources? The rise and fall of cycle of some. Well, I did a video recently which was recording my LA speech about how people move down a class and lose their money. And so basically you just got to do the opposite of that. Yeah. Let's see. Are you a morning person or a night owl? When do you feel most productive? Kind of depends. I'm generally most productive mid-morning, early afternoon, like between 10 to 2, like 9:30 to 2 generally is when I'm the most productive. And sometimes when I get more creative work like YouTube, I'm actually more productive at night. But for like my day life, my business, I'm generally more productive during the day, and I'm more productive when I'm not as sociable. So yeah, like and also I have enough sleep. Like if I get up too early, it ruins the whole day. So in terms of productivity, no, I don't think there's any conspiracies of more efficient forms of energy that were censored or blocked. I don't really believe in that. Yeah. So yeah, it is a Greek name, but it's a common name in America for people who were born between the years of 1985 and 2000. It was one of the most popular young boys' names for people born at the end of the 20th century. So whether they're Greek or not. And no, I have no Greek. It is a Greek name, though. You're all right about that. St. Nicholas was a Greek who lived in modern day Turkey. So, yeah, let's see. Who was the last good governor of the state of California? It's probably Pete Wilson. So, a long time ago. Yeah, in my living memory, I can't remember a good governor in the state of California. And I don't even know enough about Pete Wilson to see whether he is a good governor or not. But yeah, but there has, and as long as I've been following California politics, there has not been a good governor. So yeah, that's my take on that. How long do you think we have robots in normal people's houses cooking, folding clothes? 2030. I think it's coming a lot sooner than people think. I think it's going to be here by 2030. And I know that and if you want to learn more about that, I actually did a video about this topic last year and about the developments, and it's advanced even a lot better there's current new things. I probably should do an update on this video, honestly, because there's actually a lot of new developments in this very category about humanoid robots, but they're here. I think they're heavily underrated compared to everybody's talking about AI, but I think the real kind of low key trend that's going on right now that people aren't really talking about is humanoid robots, and they're going to come and they're going to replace a lot of blue collar and low skilled service labor and the trades and all this other stuff that people think are safe. So, yeah, it's coming. I think everybody's gonna have a Rosie the robot in their house pretty soon, and it will be great. It'll allow a lot of older people to live on their own and not be in retirement homes. It will allow stay-at-home parents to spend their time educating and rearing their kids and not doing mindless chores. It will be a net positive to society. Let's see. Yeah. So yeah, it's coming. And I think with that, I think I'm going to wrap this live up. I'm getting tired. I went way longer than I expected to. But thank you guys for watching, and continue to support the channel. I look forward to seeing you guys at the upcoming live streams. And I mean live streams, I mean meetups and live stream. And I think I'm going to do the next live stream is books reviews, and not book reviews, but like recommended other sources of media that I follow, that I do my research. Have a good night, everybody.